The searing pain shot through my hands as Emma held them against the burning stove, her grip unnaturally strong for a 19-year-old. "This will teach you to stay out of my life," she hissed, pressing harder as I screamed. The smell of burning flesh filled the kitchen, making me dizzy with pain and horror. My name is Julia, and at 23, I never imagined my own sister would deliberately maim me. But there I was, trapped in our family kitchen, being tortured by the sister I'd practically raised while our parents traveled for business. The attack lasted only seconds but felt like hours. When Emma finally released me, I collapsed to the floor, cradling my severely burned hands against my chest. Through tear-blurred vision, I saw her smirking down at me. "Next time, think twice before telling Mom and Dad about my boyfriend." She kicked my leg as she walked past, leaving me trembling on the cold tile floor. I somehow managed to call 911 using voice commands on my phone. The pain was unbearable, and I could already see the skin blistering and peeling. This wasn't just a minor burn, this was serious damage. My parents arrived at the emergency room before the doctors even finished their initial examination. Mom burst into the treatment room, her face a mask of concern. Not for me, but for the family's reputation. "Julia, darling, what happened?" "Emma says it was an accident, that you weren't paying attention while cooking." Mom's voice carried that familiar note of warning, the one that said, "Follow the family story." I looked at my bandaged hands, then at my mother's perfectly composed face. "It wasn't an accident," I said firmly. "Emma held my hands on the hot stove because I told you about her 28-year-old boyfriend." Mom's expression hardened. "Don't be ridiculous. Your sister would never do such a thing. You're just being dramatic, as usual. We'll tell the doctors you had a cooking accident." Before I could protest, Dad walked in, his face stern. "Princess, we need to handle this carefully. A scandal could ruin your sister's college applications. Just say you weren't paying attention while cooking. The insurance will cover everything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My hands were possibly permanently damaged, and all they cared about was protecting Emma's reputation. The burn specialist, Dr. Martinez, entered the room just then, holding detailed photographs of my injuries. "These burns show a distinct pattern," she said, her voice professional but concerned. "There are finger-shaped pressure marks around the wrists, indicating someone was holding your hands down. This wasn't an accident." My parents exchanged worried glances. Dad stepped forward, his checkbook already in hand. "Doctor, surely we can discuss this. My daughter was just careless while cooking. There's no need to make assumptions." Dr. Martinez's expression turned steely. "Mr. Anderson, these photos and my medical report clearly show signs of deliberate injury. As a mandated reporter, I'm obligated to report suspected abuse." "Abuse?" Mom laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous. We're a respected family. Julia is just clumsy. Always has been. Tell her, Julia." I looked at my bandaged hands, thinking about all the times I covered for Emma, all the times I'd accepted my role as the family scapegoat. The pain medication was wearing off, and with the physical pain came clarity. "Dr. Martinez is right," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "Emma held my hands on the stove because I told our parents about her dating an older man. She wanted to punish me." The color drained from my mother's face. "Julia, think about what you're saying. This could ruin your sister's future." "What about my future?" I demanded, holding up my bandaged hands. "I'm a pianist. I teach music. These hands are my life, and Emma knew that when she did this." Dr. Martinez placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "The police are already on their way. We've documented everything, including the distinct burn patterns and trauma marks. Your hands will need extensive treatment, possibly surgery." My father's face darkened. "If you do this, Julia, if you report your sister, you're no longer part of this family. Think carefully about your next words." I looked at my bandaged hands again, thinking about my piano students, my small music studio, everything I built with these hands that my sister had so callously tried to destroy. The choice was surprisingly easy. "I want to press charges," I told Dr. Martinez, ignoring my parents' gasps of outrage, "and I want a restraining order against my sister." Mom started crying, while Dad stormed out of the room, already on his phone. But for the first time in years, I felt strangely calm. My hands throbbed beneath the bandages, but my heart was steady. This was just the beginning of a long journey, but at least now I was choosing my own path. Dr. Martinez smiled approvingly. "You're making the right choice. Now let's talk about your treatment plan. Your hands can heal. but it will take time and dedication. As she explained the upcoming procedures, I heard my mother's heels clicking away down the hospital corridor, leaving me alone with my decision and its consequences. But somehow, the silence they left behind felt more like freedom than abandonment. The next few weeks were a blur of police interviews, medical procedures, and deafening silence from my family. Emma was arrested but quickly bailed out by our parents. They hired the best defense attorney in the state, sparing no expense to protect their precious younger daughter. Meanwhile, I struggled to adapt to life with severely burned hands. Simple tasks like brushing my teeth or getting dressed became monumental challenges. My small apartment above my music studio felt empty and quiet. No students practicing scales, no melody flowing from my fingers. Dr. Martinez had become my unexpected ally. She connected me with the best hand specialists and even recommended a trauma counselor. Your physical healing is just part of the journey, she told me during one of my checkups. The emotional scars need attention too. One morning, while struggling to make coffee, I received a text from my Aunt Sophie, my mother's estranged sister. I saw the police report. I'm coming to help. Don't argue. 2 hours later, she arrived at my door, suitcase in hand and determination in her eyes. Your mother called me, she said, stepping inside. Try to convince me you're making everything up for attention. Showed me those hands of yours. I held up my bandaged hands, still raw and painful beneath the gauze. Aunt Sophie's face softened. Your mother did the same thing when we were young, protected the wrong people, ignored the obvious truth. That's why we haven't spoken in years. Having Aunt Sophie around changed everything. She helped with daily tasks, drove me to medical appointments, and most importantly, gave me the family support my parents had withdrawn. Your mother called again. She announced one evening while helping me change my bandages. Says Emma's college withdrew her acceptance after the police report went public. They're blaming you for ruining her future. I stared at my healing hands, the angry red scars still visible beneath the new skin. What about my future? I have 15 piano students who had to find new teachers. My hands might never be the same. That's exactly what I told your mother, Aunt Sophie said firmly. Then I hung up on her. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a month after the incident. My parents hired a team of lawyers who tried everything to make the case disappear. They offered money, threatened to cut me off completely, even sent family friends to reason with me. But the evidence was irrefutable. Dr. Martinez's detailed documentation, the ER photos, and the distinct burn patterns told a story that no amount of money could erase. The prosecutor was confident, but that didn't make facing my family in court any easier. Emma sat across the courtroom, dressed in a conservative blue dress, looking more like a victim than a perpetrator. Our parents flanked her protectively, not even glancing in my direction. But I wasn't alone. Aunt Sophie sat beside me, her presence steadying and strong. The prosecutor presented the medical evidence. Dr. Martinez testified about the deliberate nature of the burns, the force required to hold someone's hands down on a hot surface. With each piece of evidence, I saw my parents' carefully crafted narrative crumbling. During a break in proceedings, I overheard my mother in the hallway. She's always been jealous of Emma. This is just another attempt to get attention. She'll regret destroying our family like this. Aunt Sophie squeezed my shoulder. You're not destroying anything, sweetheart. You're finally breaking free from their toxic protection of Emma's behavior. The judge ordered a psychiatric evaluation for Emma. The results revealed a pattern of aggressive behavior and a complete lack of remorse. My sister sat stone-faced as the psychiatrist described her as a potential danger to others. That evening, alone in my apartment with Aunt Sophie, I finally broke down. Why didn't they protect me? I'm their daughter too. Aunt Sophie held me as I cried, careful not to touch my healing hands. Some parents choose the child who needs the most protection, not realizing they're enabling destruction. Your parents failed you, but you're not failing yourself. She was right. Despite everything, my hands were slowly healing. The specialists were optimistic about recovery, though they warned it would take time and extensive therapy. My piano might be silent for now, but it wouldn't be forever. Dr. Martinez had introduced me to a support group for survivors of family violence. There, I found others who understood the complicated mix of love, betrayal, and determination to heal. Their stories helped me realize I wasn't alone in choosing truth over family loyalty. As spring turned to summer, my hands began to heal, revealing scars that told a story of survival rather than victimhood. My parents continued their campaign of silence, But I was learning that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who stands with you when the truth is painful. Aunt Sophie helped me reorganize my music studio, adapting it for hand therapy exercises. When you're ready, she said, you'll play again, and your music will be stronger for surviving this. Looking at my healing hands, I knew she was right. This wasn't the end of my story, it was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I finally understood the true meaning of strength and family. 6 months after the incident, I sat in a courtroom for Emma's sentencing. My sister had finally pleaded guilty to aggravated assault, faced with overwhelming evidence and the prosecutor's determination. The plea deal would keep her out of prison but required mandatory psychiatric treatment and 3 years of probation. My parents still wouldn't look at me, but I noticed my mother's hands trembling as the judge spoke. Emma stood emotionless as her sentence was read, her perfectly styled hair and designer outfit a stark contrast to the severity of her crime. Would the victim like to make a statement? The judge asked, looking at me with kind eyes. I stood slowly, my hands now free of bandages but marked with scars that told my story. The courtroom fell silent as I faced my family for the first time since the preliminary hearing. My sister didn't just burn my hands, I began, my voice steady. She tried to burn away my identity, my passion, my future. But these scars? I held up my hands. They taught me more about strength than any piano piece I've ever played. Emma shifted uncomfortably as I continued. I don't wish you harm, Emma. I hope you get the help you need. But I want you to know that despite your attempt to silence my music, I'm still here, still playing, still teaching. It was true. 2 weeks earlier, I had played my first full piece since the incident. A simple melody, but one that brought tears to Aunt Sophie's eyes. My hands weren't the same, but they were healing, adapting, finding new ways to create music. After the sentencing, Dr. Martinez, who had become more than just my doctor, approached with news that would change everything. There's a specialized rehabilitation program in Vienna, she said, handing me a brochure. They work specifically with musicians recovering from hand trauma. I've recommended you for their summer session. I stared at the brochure, hope blooming in my chest. Vienna, the city of Mozart and Beethoven. A place where I could heal and rediscover my music away from the weight of family trauma. Aunt Sophie immediately offered to help with expenses, but a surprise was waiting at home. My students' parents had organized a fundraiser, collecting enough to cover not just the program but also living expenses in Vienna. We believe in you, they wrote in a card signed by all my former students. Your music will play again. As I packed for Vienna, my mother made one last attempt to pull me back into their carefully constructed world of denial. She appeared at my apartment, looking older than I remembered. Please, he said, standing awkwardly in my doorway. Can't we just put this behind us? Emma's learned her lesson. Come home, let us take care of you. I looked at my scared hands, then at my packed bags. Mom, I am taking care of myself. For the first time, I'm choosing my own healing. But we're family, she protested weakly. Yes, we are, I agreed. And when you're ready to acknowledge what really happened, when you can see both your daughters as people worthy of protection, I'll be here. But for now, I need to find my music again. She left without another word, but I saw her pause by my piano, running her fingers lightly across the keys I hadn't been able to play for so long. The day I left for Vienna, Aunt Sophie drove me to the airport. Dr. Martinez came to see me off, bringing a special set of therapeutic putty for my hands. Remember, she said, hugging me goodbye, healing isn't just about the physical scars. It's about reclaiming your story. My first day in Vienna, I stood outside the rehabilitation center, heart pounding. Inside were other musicians, dancers, pianists, violinists, all working to overcome various injuries, none caused by family, but all fighting to reclaim their art. The therapist, a kind-faced woman named Ingrid, assessed my hands with expert care. There is strength in these scars, she said, gently manipulating my fingers. We will help you find new ways to make your music. And she was right. Over the next 3 months, I learned to adapt my playing, to work with my changed hands rather than against them. Some days were frustrating, filled with failed attempts and tears. But there were also breakthroughs. The first time I played a full sonata, the moment I realized I could teach again. 1 year after Emma held my hands to that stove, I gave my first public performance in Vienna. I played a piece I had composed during therapy called Phoenix Hands. The scars were still visible, but as my fingers moved across the keys, They told a story not of violence, but of resilience. Aunt Sophie flew in for the performance, tears streaming down her face as I played. Even Dr. Martinez watched via video call, her smile bright with pride. My parents didn't come, didn't even acknowledge the invitation I had sent. But sitting at that piano, playing my truth through music, I realized that sometimes the family we choose is stronger than the family we're born into. My hands would never be the same, but perhaps they were stronger now, not despite the scars, but because of what those scars had taught me about survival, healing, and the power of creating beauty from pain.